Hello and welcome to the Everything is Black and White podcast, joined by Chief Sports Writer Lee Ryder, who's back at his hotel after watching Newcastle lose 3-0 to Arsenal down at the Emirates. And Lee, how do you sum up what you've seen? Another defeat for Newcastle United, and can it get any worse?
Yeah, it can. That's the scary thing about it. They've got Aston Villa coming up. They've got Everton away coming up as well. The opportunities to get points, are going to be limited, and they just don't look like they're getting anywhere at the moment. Doesn't matter what team they put out, doesn't matter what formation they play, doesn't matter what Steve Bruce tells them. They just are not performing on the pitch. 9 games without a win now, out of both cup competitions. It's starting to look a little bit bleak.
Obviously, all the talk before the game was about the gloves coming off and doing it my way, Steve Bruce said. The first half was an improvement, I think some would say, but given how they're performing against Sheffield United, anything would have been an improvement. Did you see any relation to the gloves being off during that performance? Did you see a massive improvement at all?
Well, I think first half, you couldn't complain too much because, they held Arsenal and then they had the platform to maybe go on and do something in the second half. But sadly, they just they didn't look like, they come out for the second half and they just capitulated completely. Like I said, had a shot early on, and then after that, they just looked like they didn't fancy it at all after a Darlow save. And then, they're 2-0 down by the hour mark. It's game over. There's not really many options on the bench to change it. And, they were never going to score 3 goals at Arsenal to come back and win it 3-2. So yeah, it was just really disappointing overall.
How was Steve Bruce in his press conference? What was his reaction like?
Yeah, I think he looks like a man who doesn't really have the answers himself. He can't go to the chairman and ask for a big checkbook and, sign 3 or 4 players in January because he's been told there's no money there. And really, they're basically sort of suggesting, we're not going to change manager. But by the same token, in some ways, he just looks completely downtrodden, resigned to an inevitable change. And I think in other football clubs, they would have changed manager by now. So it's not looking good for him. He's had his moments as Newcastle manager. He's won some games last season. I think last season was sort of papered over the cracks a bit with the FA Cup run to the quarterfinals, and then obviously we had the lockdown, so that added a 3-month extension to things. So it's all just catching up with Newcastle at the moment, and it's a hard watch. It's a hard watch. If it's hard on television, it's believe me, it's hard to look at it from the stadium. And look, I'm in a privileged position. I love my position, and it's great to follow Newcastle United everywhere. But that is difficult to watch at the moment because when you know what Newcastle's built on, it's built on like passion. It's built on playing for the badge, playing for the shirt, playing for the fans. And we're just not seeing any of that at the moment. They're just going through the motions. So that is particularly difficult to sit and watch.
You started with 2 up front, Andy Carroll and Callum Wilson. And I think you noticed this as well. You tweeted something similar when Carroll came off and Murphy came on. I think you tweeted something like, a striker without the service has just been taken off for a winger or something along those lines. Frustrate you that in the first half, defensively, they looked a bit stronger than in previous weeks, and yet they didn't create anything going forward, despite the fact they had Wilson and Carroll up top?
Yeah, I think Wilson and Carroll were both starved of service. That was obvious from the opening 10 minutes. Almiron put a cross in, it went straight at the goalkeeper's hands, nice and easy. Emil Kraft then tried to put in a cross on the right. Didn't actually even enter the box. He scuffed it out for a goal kick. And from that point onwards, you did wonder just where this game was going to be going. And it was just, it just didn't look like Newcastle had a clear idea what they'd been asked to do. Coaching staff sort of scratching their heads when Newcastle were 3-0 down, bringing the 6'4" centre forward off and replacing him with a winger. I didn't understand that part of it. Elliot Anderson, good that he got his Premier League debut, but it's not really the environment you want to be chucking a youngster in, and we all like to see the youngsters get a chance, but that's a tough time for him to be making his debut when they're 3-0 down at Arsenal. So overall, I'm a positive guy, but at the end of the day, I'm struggling to find anything to give you there that's positive tonight.
Your player ratings, you mentioned that Kieran Clark was one of the few to come out with any credit. Caldalo again. You weren't too impressed with Jonjo Shelvey. He returned, and I guess everyone saw that corner that didn't beat the first man, that led inevitably to the first goal. Expecting more from a senior player like Shelvey, maybe?
A lot more from such a talented player. I think I sat down here and done a review of the year with you not that long ago, and I said when Jonjo Shelvey is in the right place, Newcastle can be unplayable. When he's not in the right place and he's not really bothered, you get performances like that. So corners that don't even reach the first man, for it to happen once is bad, for it to happen twice is shocking, and then for Newcastle to then concede a goal from your own goal threat is just massively frustrating, and it must have been even more difficult for fans to watch back home. And I wouldn't have blamed some of them if they switched off after the second goal went in. Look, I'm not trying to make a joke of it. It was dire. There's no doubt about it. I'm running out of negative words to say now.
Are they in a relegation battle? I mean, the cushion's still 7 points, but they're just performing so badly, and fans are quite rightly worried. Again, the hard-hitting match report, you can find that on Chronicle Live if you haven't read it already. Are they in a relegation battle, Lee?
Yeah, they are. And I've experienced a few of these covering Newcastle, and there's a lot that reminds me of the seasons that went down, and also the near misses. You look at... The thing is, when you start looking at other teams' results, which, let's be honest, hands up, we've all been guilty of it in the last 2 or 3 weeks. You all start looking over your shoulder and hoping that Brighton are going to lose or West Brom are going to lose. Those teams aren't going to keep losing. Newcastle aren't going to stay up with 19 points. So it sounds like I'm stating the obvious, but other results don't matter. You have to sort your side of the bargain out first, and if they don't get their act together quickly, then the other teams are going to gather momentum. West Brom, Big Sam, we all know what he's about. He's a survival specialist. He'll find a way of at least chasing this gap down. They've got nothing to lose. And there's always one team that gets sucked into it. And at the minute, that team is looking like Newcastle. So, everyone around the place, the players, coaching staff, those above them, they need to wake up quickly, because it's no good changing something in 10 games' time, because by that time, they could be right in the mix of it. The big problem they've had in the 2 relegations they've suffered so far has been they've acted too late. Great to get Rafa Benitez in, but with 10 games to go, it was too late. So they either need to spend some money and bring in some players, or they need a drastic change in the coaching setup. And but again, who is going to come in and take this job on with no money, no long-term job security? It's a hard sell,
Just a couple more questions before we let you go. Michael Richardson here on YouTube says he's tuning in from Australia. He says it's getting harder to watch us play. We deserve to have our team competing matches, just constantly giving the ball away and putting ourselves under pressure. And I suppose that links into Steve Bruce talking about going back to basics, because again, tonight we've talked about the Shelvey corner. You could argue for the other 2 Arsenal goals, the 2 goal scorers were unmarked in the box. Surely they are the basics that Steve Bruce needs to be getting right, needs to be telling these players, these are the schoolboy elements of the game that you need to get right.
Yeah, and he's obviously a former centre-half himself, so, at the minute, it just feels like Steve Bruce is a frustrated centre-back / captain who'd like to be on the pitch. He's shouting out all orders from the sideline, but it's almost like they're not listening. They're just going in one ear and out the other ear. And yeah, in some ways, I feel for him in a way that he's took this job on like a lot that have come before him. And he's finding out that there's not that much money to spend, there's not that much resource, and it's a very difficult job. But in other ways, he took it on. He, come out with some big statements this season, last season, saying they're going to go for the top 10. So it's, where are they going to back that up, or when are they going to back that up?
And just there, we got from Graham Harrison, situation with Dwight Gayle. A lot of people would have liked to have seen Dwight Gayle start tonight. Graham asking there, why doesn't he play Gayle from the start? Because he is a massive fan of him as well.
Illness is what I've been told. Not COVID, but some other type of illness which is held him back. So he wasn't in and around it. But yeah, I agree. I'm a Dwight Gayle fan myself. But at the end of the day, had he been on that pitch tonight, no service at all. And until they start actually getting that ball in the 6-yard area, they're going to continue to lose football games. And it just feels, it's making like teams like the Alan Pardew team after they finished 5th. This is, those couple of seasons where everyone was complaining, it's making Pardew look like a tactical genius at the moment, because he was at least capable of beating the results out, getting a 1-0 win at places like Tottenham and things like that. He always seemed to have a tactical plan there. And, for all people hammered John Carver when he was in charge, it was a tough job for him. But John Carver was behind the scenes with Pardew, and they always at least had a game plan. And yeah, they didn't manage to get back to 5th. And I'm not saying that they would be the answer now, but at the moment, what the point I'm trying to make is there does not seem to be a game plan there. And if there is plan A there, once that goes, it just all seems to go out the window. And second half was a great example of that. When they went 1-0 down, no response, 2-0 down, towel got thrown in. And then obviously they were lucky to get away with 3-0. Arsenal had 20 goal attempts in the end. So it was just an awful night.
Cardallo, yet again, saving Newcastle's blushes in many ways. Penultimate question then. I was going to ask you what happens next, but someone's kind of beating us to it in the comments here. And they just say, if we think they're going to get sucked in, we're seeing them in the relegation battle, why don't Newcastle change it now? What is worth the risk? What's worth the gamble? Because if they get relegated, that's a massive financial burden on Mike Ashley.
Yeah, it is. And that's the situation that he's got to weigh up. He's got to, when does he come in and change it? And who does he get? To be fair, there will be managers out there that will take it on. But, prepare to be disappointed because Newcastle have got it wrong in the past. They were fortunate to get Rafa Benitez. It captured everyone's imagination. But someone like Rafa Benitez to come in now would want assurances. He'd say, right, if I keep them up, what happens next? Newcastle can't tell them that because they're trying to sell the club. So it's a real mess at the moment. And I don't know where they go from here, and I don't know where the next win comes from. So it's, as I say, I haven't got many positives tonight.
Yeah, we're not going to finish on one. This is the final question, and it's a question a lot of people are asking as well. Are the players still fighting for Steve Bruce? Did you see evidence tonight that the players are still fighting for the cause under the head coach?
Well, that's a very good question, and second half you have to say some of them no. You have to say some of them no. But the reality is, for Steve Bruce, he's got to find a way of doing it. He made 8 changes tonight and still didn't change anything. Didn't change the fortunes on the pitch at all. In fact, in some places it was even worse than Sheffield United. As bad as that sounds. Towards the end, it was just like a training game. At least they were fighting until the final whistle against Sheffield United to try and get an equaliser. Tonight, the game was gone by the hour mark. So, look, the players probably need to have a look at themselves. I really think that. But some of them may have already chuck the towel in altogether. And players have got that. They've got that power, unfortunately. And if they decide they've stopped playing for somebody, that's it.
And just one word then, Lee, just sum up the situation that Steve Bruce finds himself in and Newcastle find themselves in.
In one word, it feels hopeless. It feels hopeless. And hope is what you need in football. But at the end of the day, does anyone go in the next game thinking that they're going to suddenly miraculously win the game? They have to stop the rot first somehow, and at the minute they just don't look like doing that.
It doesn't get any easier with Villa next on the horizon. Of course, Steve Bruce's former team, which will add spice to it. We'll have a podcast later in the week with Lee on that. Lee, thanks for joining us. Safe travels back to Tyneside. And to everyone else who joined in and listened, thanks for tuning in. Enjoy the rest of your evening.